When I went to UNC Chapel Hill, so I lived on a dorm that was right off of Franklin Street, so everybody was always at Spencer dorm. It had a piano in the dorm room, in sort of the lobby area. So I would always go there every Saturday, and I would play the piano, just having fun, hanging out, playing the piano, and I never understood why no one else played the piano. I started having people come down and give me requests. They'd say things like, play Piano Man, play Freebird, play whatever. So I'd play it, and it started to attract more and more people. So sooner or later, Saturday nights became piano night. People would come drunk, trashed, hell or high water, people would come. And I started getting repeat people coming and sort of fans. And it soon became a thing to do. And it was dubbed Piano Night. That's one of my favorite pastimes. Piano nights also kind of opened me up to not being afraid of playing my own stuff in front of people. Because while I was playing tons of covers, I would play my own original music in the middle somewhere here and there just to sneak them in, and people received them very well. And so that was one of the stepping stones. And then eventually people were telling me, you need to move to New York. And then you know the rest. I will never know where you are, 'cause everything's wrong and everything's right. Oh, we must hold on, all we do is fight. But you got to let go, let go. I started out performing solo at several different venues, just myself and my keyboard, and my friends would come out and I would play. And then I ended up putting together a small trio, which then turned into a full band. And I then began to play around the city. And my next goal was to create an EP, which I did. I called a few labels, and eventually I got signed to my first deal with major distribution. And then so in 2010, I put out my debut full-length album, Lachi. And that album ended up getting me a lot of decent coverage. And that opened up a whole bunch of doors and helped establish myself as a musician here in New York. So what I do as a musician currently is several things. I primarily focus on vocals and songwriting because I'm actually working on an album, so I will be touring once that's finished. I also compose and transcribe, or if somebody has created a film or a small video project and they want original composition playing in the background, I do scoring as well. So that's pretty much what I do for music. You can come in whenever you want. You want to just come in at the top. Super slow. So
can you play the piano and I'll play along with you instead of making me set the pace?
Arthur and I met in the Glee Club at Chapel Hill. We've been together for 11 years. Last year, we had actually gotten our official partnership papers signed. We got it signed March 14, 2015, and we signed it exactly at 9:26 and 53 seconds so that we can have had our partnership at 3.141592653, which is pi. And that instance, that fact, is the very epitome of our entire relationship. Just nerdy things that we just think are ridiculous, so we do them. Arthur and I dated for several months, actually, before he even realized I was legally blind. I have a disease called coloboma, which means that there's a big hole in my retina. It's during fetal development. Your retina doesn't fully develop. It affects your acuity, which means it affects how well you see. And so I have in my right eye a really big instance of coloboma, and then a smaller one in my left eye. Now, when I was first born, actually, they've told my mom that I was blind fully. So she started to try to learn Braille, actually, so that she could teach it to me and stuff like that. Then they found out, not too long later, that I wasn't blind, but that I had low vision. First, I started off when I was really young in a school for the developmentally disabled, or like the developmentally challenged. And I ended up sort of excelling in that area, and they started to realize that, well, I have a visual impairment, but I'm not developmentally disabled. So they took me out of that and they just put me in public school. And, we never really talked about it too much while I was growing up. All of my sisters would just pick on me like normal at home. I would have to do the same amount of work everybody else has to do with chores and this and that. They didn't really coddle me. They didn't treat me like, oh no, you're blind, you need all of these things, we need to give you all this help. I was just kind of forced to be a normal kid. And so that's kind of why I just live normal. And it's funny too, because I had a bunch of blind friends for a while that I was hanging out with. And, they all have the dog or the cane and all of that stuff. And then some of them have about the same amount of vision as I do. But they weren't raised the way I was raised. And they believe that they need all this help. Whereas I don't believe I need all this help. Now, I need some help with certain things, but I don't feel like, oh, I need this person to help me do this, or oh, I need this or that, because of the way I was raised. I was raised as if I didn't really have a problem, at least at home. Oh. When I was a kid, I was super quiet and always kind of stayed to myself, and I was insular. One of the things I did a lot was daydream. So I daydreamed all the time. I would daydream just while I'm sitting at home. I would daydream to help me go to sleep. I would daydream if I'm in a bad situation and I'm really scared or depressed as a kid. I would just kind of daydream it away and just kind of go into these fantasy lands that I would make up in my head as a kid. My older brother and I, we had a bunch of dolls that we would play with together, and we called them the Cotty Kids. So he ended up growing out of that and moving on with his life. So I had a little brother, so I made him play with me. And we would have really intricate situations. When we both kind of grew out of playing with our dolls together, I ended up translating that story that he and I played into one of my fantasy daydreams. And so as I grew older, all of the other fantasy stories that I was building in my head sort of disappeared, and I only had one story that I was super involved in. And it was the story born of the dolls and stuff that I played with my brother. That story, for some reason, stuck the most in my head. And then as I read different books and watched different films, fantastical and sci-fi and horror elements began to get into my little, head story in my head. So I started writing it down, and that became my next novel. Currently, it's called The Burn Notice. The characters in The Burn Notice have been with me since my early teen years, or even before I was 11. Their entire lives and their whole worlds have grown with me to the point where I feel like I am each of the characters in this story. And I know a lot of authors say that. It's like, I get into my characters, but I grew up with these characters. So I really feel like they're a part of me. And so that's how this second book came to be. Where is my kitty? Where is my kitty? Where on earth can she be? Where is my kitty? Where is my kitty? Underneath the TV. Yay! That is my song. Somebody had asked me on like a radio interview, what are the benefits of your visual impairment? Because they said, I'm sure everybody asks you, what are the downsides? But what are the benefits? And my answer was actually, because I was visually impaired, it made it so that I didn't socialize. Because a lot of people were kind of picking on me and everything. But it also made me very creative. And it made me learn a lot about myself. And it made me really dig into deep depths of my imagination because I spent so much time inside of my own head and creating and imagining. I feel like that's definitely a positive thing because it's allowed me to create this music and create these stories and create these novels and poems. So I used to think that being blind deprived me of other opportunities, which it does. However, I've come to find that everybody has something that deprives them from opportunities. Whether it be that they're afraid of heights, or whether it be that they got pregnant at 16, or whether it be that their parents were abusive, or whether it be that they just didn't get the raise they wanted and they can't let that go. Everybody has a problem that they think is such a horrible problem that it kind of hinders them from being able to get the specific opportunities they want to get. And so, although being blind physically does limit me in certain ways, just being creative opens up those other doors to allow me to do some of the things that I've always wanted to do and didn't think I could do because I was blind.